Hello, everyone. Welcome to Couch Talk. Dr. Anna Cabeca here. And today we're going to dig in deep to intermittent fasting. We're going to talk about the science behind fasting and what strategies should be put into place to put safety first, and how keto and fasting for women is something that is really specialized. And we have to figure out what works for us and what doesn't work for us. We'll get into some autophagy and some science too, because I have the most amazing Dr. Mindy Pelz, who is just crazy passionate about helping families stay healthy. And she has built one of the largest holistic health clinics in Silicon Valley, with patients coming to her from all over the world. She wrote The Reset Factor in 2015, which is a bestseller that gives people access to a clear step-by-step path to creating healthy, vibrant, energy-filled life, free from disease and suffering. She digs in deep, and she has this resetter tribe that is just on board and on task and really passionate about living the healthiest life. And I have met Mindy recently, but I feel like we are soul sisters. So y'all join us in this conversation.
Agreed.
I look forward to it. All right. Hey, Mindy, how are you?
Yeah, thank you. I'm awesome and excited to be here. So thank you for having me.
Well, I am thrilled. So tell us a little bit about how you got into intermittent fasting as part of your protocols in keto.
Yeah, I think I think I was like the typical woman going through her 40s, where I started to experience unusual hot flashes and insomnia. And I started to gain, that belly weight and everything I was doing wasn't working. And I just was coming up against walls with my health that I was just not okay with. And so, I'm 49 now, and it was about when I turned 43 that I started looking for different solutions, because I was eating right. I was actually gluten-free at the time, and I was eating really well. I felt like I was exercising all the time. Like there was no reason my health should not be anything but optimal in those days. And about at that time,
you're a chiropractor, right? So
yes.
Alignment is key, nutrition is key, holistic approach. So you already have those things dialed in, and you were still feeling this way.
Yeah. And I think that's probably the most eye-opening experience I've had of my 40s, is I was already doing everything that the books told us to do, and my hormones were still off. I still wasn't feeling my best. And so that's about the time intermittent fasting started coming out in the research. And it's funny, I don't know if you had this experience when you started learning about intermittent fasting. Literally, my first thought was, every day you're supposed to intermittent fast like that every day? Like when I first read it, I was like, oh, go 13 to 15 hours without food. Yeah, no problem. But then when I saw that people were doing it every day, I was a little apprehensive. I'm like, I don't know. I like my breakfast. Isn't breakfast the most important meal of the day?
Absolutely. And that's the key thing. That's the key thing that we have to recognize, is that breaking fast is key. But listen, Mindy, I'm from that camp that we've got to eat by 6 o'clock, right? Yep. Definitely by 7. So, and allow our time to digest our food to digest before we get to bed, right?
Absolutely.
So yeah, let's keep going.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but then the more science kept coming out and more people were doing intermittent fasting. And about that time, the ketogenic diet was starting to appear. And so, it just was the research and the evidence and the experiences people were having was so profound that I honestly just said, okay, let's jump in. Let me try this on myself first. I don't know if you do this, but I'm always like, well, let me try it on me or a family member first before I decide if I want to even roll it out to my patient base.
Always.
Yeah. So
almost always, unless it requires, unless it's painful, then I'm no way.
Right, there you go. You're right. It depends on how much pain is involved. Then I select the family member very closely.
Exactly, right?
So
no prejudice there. No,
not at all. But here's what happened. And I think this is what happens to a lot of women, is once I started doing intermittent fasting, I stopped becoming hypoglycemic, which is shocking. In fact, I laugh because my sister, my older sister, has remained in that camp of I need to eat breakfast, I need to eat 6 meals a day. And I know. And when she spent last summer with me, we spent 2 weeks together in a cabin. And after about a week and a half, she looked at me and she said, "You have always been the type of person that needs to eat all day long. And now you're not eating till like 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. What the heck has happened?" And I think that is so counterintuitive for people. They don't realize that one of the ways to fix your blood sugar imbalance is through intermittent fasting.
You know, that's huge because actually I did a radio show yesterday and they've been pinging me on questions regarding like, well, if someone's really hypoglycemic, should they intermittent fast? I'm like, absolutely. Just make sure you've loaded up with healthy fats, right?
That's
You've
right.
got good quality healthy fats at your prior meal, fats and fiber, right? Fats, fiber, protein, the fiber being lots of greens as well. And so, you know, if we are incorporating that, man, 2 to 3 meals a day is easy,
Yep.
easy. None of this. And then, oh my gosh, let's talk about, so if you're talking, a fast that's, anywhere 13, 15 or 16 hours with an eating window, I have run across people that's like eating window gives them permission to eat all during that window.
Whatever they want. Yeah. And whatever they want. We'll get questions from people who ask us, can I drink Diet Coke during my fast? Right. And we're like, no, wait. We missed the point here because it should be combined with a healthy life.
Yeah.
So
many people don't realize like diet soda was the, was the treacherous creation of the 70s. It was with Fanta and all this stuff. It has created an insulin resistant obese population. And it's something that breaks my heart because my mom, who was diabetic, she's like diet soda all the time, which worsened her diabetes. People need to understand that if you get nothing else, honestly, from this talk today, note that diet sodas, artificial sweeteners, increase your cravings, increase your hunger, increase your weight overall.
Yeah.
So
there's a great article that I recently posted for my resetters in PubMed. If you just type in toxins and diabetes, it shows that they're now believing both type 1 and type 2 diabetes is coming from very specific toxins, pesticides, arsenic, glyphosate. So, and they're proving that is so damaging to the cell that it's causing insulin resistance. So here you are over here trying to do keto and fasting, but if you're toxifying yourself when you actually eat or you're eating all the time, it's a harder journey. You're not going to get that result that you want to get.
Right. Absolutely. And now with the immunology research and things coming out about plant stem cells, exosome peptides, and all that fascinating stuff, we're looking at adjuvants, right? Like what is attacking our immune system, and it can be from anything foreign chemical instigating, into our body that, from what we put on our skin, even breast implants, right? We know that that's an issue creating autoimmune disease as well. I mean, I think it was 30%, it's like a 30%, somewhere between 11 to 30% increased risk of rheumatoid issues.
Yeah. With breast implants?
Breast implants.
Yeah, that's a new one I'm seeing a lot in very sick people, and it's a tough one. I hope you're out there talking about it because that's a really tough one. That's not, I mean, we talk a lot about the dangers of the dental care and getting your teeth fixed to try to solve your toxic problem is one thing, but breast implants is a whole nother level. So yeah. One of the mantras I say over and over again is that we live in the most toxic time in human history. And we really cannot be ignorant anymore. We can't turn our head the other way. We really need to ask ourselves, how do we minimize our toxic load? Because it's destroying people's physical and mental health.
Generationally.
Yes.
We know that it's passed down now.
Agreed.
It can take even generations to clear from our symptoms.
Yeah,
so we have to be very conscientious of that. All right, back to intermittent fasting. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about what intermittent fasting does, how we get into autophagy. If you want to bring up mTOR, of course, I love that stuff. But we'll get into it, and then talking about specific ways to break fast, when the different types of fasting. Let's get into that too, because I'm not exactly sure when I'm releasing this podcast, but right now I'm in the time period of Lent, so I've been fasting regularly. Extended fast is always extending fast on Sundays always, and then in the Catholic culture, no meat on Wednesdays and Fridays, and really conscientious about that. So there's that benefit. I think too, through history, traditional cultures have incorporated fasting into their lifestyle because there are health benefits to us. It brings us clearer, it makes us better people. It does. It makes me a better person. I will tell you
absolutely.
That when I have to make a serious decision, I am fasting. I am fasting before I make a serious decision any time.
Yeah.
I won't tell you about all my bad decisions that I made when
Okay. Well, I also want to know are you measuring your blood sugar, your ketones, your alkalinity this week? Because I think that is what I find about my resetter group is when you start measuring the little things like that, you start to see the magic of where fasting is really helping you. So,
yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I think that, so I've come up with what I call 7 different fasts, because I think one of the big misnomers is that people believe you just stop eating, and it's really, there's more to it than that. And there's more ways you can manipulate it than that. I don't like the word manipulation, but it really is true that you are biohacking would probably be the most common term right now. You're actually hacking into your body's own internal wisdoms. So basics, beginner's fast, 13 to 15 hours without food. That was the study that was done on where autophagy became popular. It was by Dr. Osuma over in Japan. And he found that if we removed food for 13 to 15 hours, that the cell would find food within itself, and it finds it within the toxins. So you force your body to go find those toxins and detoxify. And I think the majority of the research out there right now is on intermittent fasting, and it's just ridiculous how much research now is showing something as simple as keeping food away for 13 to 15 hours has a neuroprotective effect on your brain. It curbs hunger, and it is a way of self-detoxing.
Absolutely. And I couldn't agree more. So 13 to 15 hours is typically what I recommend women to start doing periodic intermittent, periodic extended fast, but also the research in breast cancer clients, right? That research that was published in JAMA in 2016, JAMA Oncology, and it looked at women with breast cancer. And when they had at least 12.5 to 13 hours between dinner and breakfast, I mean, heck, you're sleeping most of that time, they had a significantly decreased risk of recurrence, morbidity, and mortality.
It was like 70%. It was
huge.
And it was only, and I think they said 13 hours. It was only like something as little as 13 hours. So
right.
Yeah. So I absolutely, I think every woman should start practicing intermittent fasting. And really the easiest way to jump into that, if you start to calculate and you're like, well, I'm only at 10 hours. To me, the easiest is push breakfast back an hour and just kind of get used to that. And then after you get comfortable there, push it back 2 hours until you start to get into that 13 to 15 hour window.
And I'm definitely from the camp of pushing dinner up.
Yeah, there you go.
Dinner up, because there's an old Middle Eastern saying, Arabic saying, it's breakfast like a king, lunch like a prince, and dinner like a pauper.
Yeah.
And there's a reason, like when we break fast, that's a good meal to break fast. Like it is healthy, right? It is good fats, it is good proteins, very low carb. But, to maintain our physiology throughout the day. But it's that like at night, we've got to rest and digest. We as Americans have made dinner such a huge meal, but that's why, antacids, the purple pill, right, Nexium, and all these other, and anti-inflammatories are the number 1 and 2 drugs, OTCs in the nation, as well as the reasons for the, number 1 reason for ER admissions.
Yeah,
right?
Crazy.
So we've got to think, okay, well, just when I lecture to physicians, we have to practice medicine that makes sense. we have to live a lifestyle that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Because if we eat this meal, what is that energy for?
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to go into storage mode. And research shows, and I know you know this, but just emphasizing this point, that after 7 p.m., like our insulin, like if we eat the same meal, like after 7 p.m. as we eat before 7 p.m., apparently, I'm sure there's a gradient there, but apparently we excrete up to 50 to 70% more insulin. More insulin that's going into storage.
Interesting.
You're sitting with that overnight when you should be resting.
Yeah.
Right? You should be resting, restoring, rejuvenating. Sleep is our best anti-aging, principle. What do you call it? Sleep is our best anti-aging drug. Let's just call it that.
Yeah.
And it's restorative. So if we consider that and move dinner up, I think that's another concept too. So we can try, maybe we can't, we have dinner, we have social lives. I love to feast and party, right? So there's times, always cycling in, cycling out, creating that metabolic flexibility that's so important, but on a regular basis to acknowledge what's happening in our bodies. And then also like, okay, well, I feel really good when I do this. All right. So that's your one type of fasting.
Yeah. Yeah. And just to make a point on that, I think that's the one thing I would encourage people to do is find your eating window, find your fasting window that works for you, because you're absolutely right. It doesn't always have to be that you skip breakfast, even though that's like what you hear as the typical. It could be skip dinner. I had an interesting conversation with Jason Fung I asked him if he had ever seen fasting and low carb not unstick somebody from weight loss. Like, have you ever seen it not work for somebody? And he said, nope, I've never seen it not work. What sometimes happens is that people have to constantly change their eating window and their fasting window. So if they're eating dinner all the time and skipping breakfast and they've got stuck, then they need to switch it and they need to start eating breakfast and skipping dinner.
Metabolic flexibility. I 100% agree. That's the whole thing. Like I would say there's fasting, and then 80% keto green, right? Like my program that I talk about, which I do see my book on your bookshelf. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Oh, we got it. We got several copies and we've been sharing the love with all of our clients. So yeah, love your book.
Thank you. So 10% feast, 10% fasting, 80% keto green, and then 10% feasting, right? That's kind of like that works for me.
Yeah.
So of course, I promote what works for me for the most part.
Well, I think though that combination works for most women. The key that you said there is fasting, feasting. I think that we have to remind ourselves that even though the principles of fasting are amazing, even though keto is incredible, if you do those two things all the time, which I see a lot of women do, you may get stuck. And the goal is not to be in ketosis all the time. The goal is to do what you just said, to be metabolically flexible. Can you go in? Can you come out? Like, you want to be able to have that ability to go and enjoy a social event with somebody, and then the next day you just click right back into keto. That's what we're looking for.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree. Okay. So, and other types of fasting.
So usually once somebody's mastered intermittent fasting, then I will go to increasing them to a 24-hour fast. So I think this serves a couple of purposes. There's a lot of people out there that call it one meal a day. So the OMAD, people who follow Jason Fung, or a lot of people love the one meal a day. It's very convenient, especially once you've learned to go without food. And I think it accomplishes two things. Ketones are neuroprotective. So the longer you can stay in a state of ketosis, the more healing that is happening, especially in the brain. So I loved what you said about how whenever you want to have your brain work right, you don't eat. That is a huge shift. I hear so many women or people in general that eat because they've got something and they want to have fuel for their brain. There is no better fuel for your brain than a ketone. So the one meal a day allows people to get deeper into ketosis. And then I think with the weight loss people, this is where I see, the idea that the longer you stay in a fasted state, the more you force your body to go and find the stored glucose, the stored insulin, like where it's stored sugar and fat, and it'll release it from there. I've seen people with liver issues that will heal where it's like the body has to go find what it had stored years ago. How cool is that we were designed like that?
I love it. I love it. And first, describe keto to tell people what a ketone is.
Okay, so when your blood sugar stays low enough for a significant period of time, your body has to find another fuel source. So it will switch from being, the most simple way to say this is it will switch from being a sugar burner to a fat burner. And so the liver produces something called ketones. This is what everybody is measuring. When you measure your ketones and you see that ketones are on the rise, it typically is a sign that the liver is now in fat burning mode. So it's a sign that our body has made that shift. What I think is the most interesting thing about that process is if we are truly primal. So if you go back and you look at how we were designed, in the cave woman days, we were meant to go long periods without food. But if we got lethargic and foggy in our brain, were we going to be able to go and find food? No, we wouldn't be able to do that. We would be like passed out in the cave and eventually we would die. So everything in our body is programmed for survival. So what happens with ketones is once your body makes this shift, you become more mentally alert, you become less hungry, you get more energy because now your body's designed to go out and hunt. It's designed to go out and find food. And I think that is what is so miraculous about this idea is that your body will make this shift and ketones are a sign that it's done that.
I love it. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's great to tie it back into how we were designed. And also over age 50, right? Over age 40, 50, past the reproductive years. I mean, we're the ones that were starving the most, right? Everyone else eats, the hunters, the kids, the reproductive age. And then we are, more restricted. So we're making sure everyone else eats first. And I think that's just part of our design. So it's even more important by design as we grow old, as we grow older.
I love that.
Oh my God, Mindy, if I haven't shared.
I hadn't thought about that, but you're right. You're absolutely right. Because
and the wise woman of the tribe, right?
Yeah.
Fasting.
Love that. I love that. And I think when we go back, what I love about fasting and even just the ketogenic world in general is that it's helping people get a belief in their bodies again. We've never been taught how to use this tool we live in all day long. And there are so many incredible ways in which our body heals. And as we start to learn like how a woman's body is designed and what we need, if we can condition our lifestyle or build a lifestyle around that, you will see that abundant energy, keeping weight off, keeping those hormones balanced, sleeping, mental clarity, all of that is really at your disposal because you were designed to be like that. Like you say, we're not designed to suffer through menopause.
No.
If that's happening, then how do you hack into your design?
Exactly. And now, so with the fasting, the different types of fasting, let's go into that, just some other, and everyone can do the 13 to 15 hour fast. That is so doable, right? Yeah, and then, like you said, you're not going to have hypoglycemia. Don't worry. Just make sure you're getting enough healthy, fats and protein, following some of the recipes like that are in my book. And Mindy, let people know how to get a hold of you.
The easiest way to get a hold of me, you can either go to my website, Dr. Mindy Pelz. My community, the Resetters on Facebook, is so much of where my heart is because we fast every month together, and they're just people on a journey trying to learn. So you can go to Facebook and just type in Resetters, and you'll see us there. And then I've put all my fasting and keto videos on YouTube, so people can find me on YouTube as well.
Okay, excellent. I know we're going to do some keto green fasting on your Resetter tribe.
Yes, that is one of the ones I want to test. And then what I want to do is, I think I have your strips here. I want to test alkalinity throughout the week. So, one of the fasts that I came up with, I call it autophagy fasting. I learned some of the principles from Naomi Whittle. And her idea was that when you break a fast, you should break it with fat. And a lot of people loved that. So we ran a whole autophagy fasting, which is you go about 17 hours without food. When you break your fast, you break it with fat so that you don't spike your blood sugar.
For example, what?
Like an avocado, nut butter, some ghee. Some people just do ghee. My new favorite product is Keto Manna. I don't know if you've tried that. It's like MCT oil with some cocoa powder in it. It's really, and it comes in these little packs so you can eat it on the go. But just something to not spike your blood sugar, but to keep your blood sugar even so you stay in autophagy. And it's a good way to get people to these extended fasts. And my point in telling you this is I want to create another fast where we break it with greens. I think that's a beautiful idea. And what would that look like? And could people break it with greens and then you don't really eat another meal for a couple of hours afterwards? It's a good way to see what greens and fiber do for you. And you could test your blood sugar with it.
Yeah, greens, fat, and fiber. So yeah, greens. And so that, I think one of the things in my philosophy around that too is like, as we're in autophagy, we're releasing toxins. And how do we support phase 2 detoxification? It's through the micronutrients, right? And the antioxidants to help encapsulate those toxins and help us eliminate them. And if we're not adding those, we're creating free radicals. Are we actually doing, like, what are we doing there? Mm-hmm. And so my philosophy is that. And so let's talk about different ways we break fast. So this is one of my things. I wait, I'll tell you what I've been doing for fasting.
Yeah, I was going to say, are you going to disclose your...
Okay, I'll disclose and then we'll talk about how we break fast. So I'm in, this is Holy Week for whatever time you guys are listening, but this is Holy Week for me. And so starting Palm Sunday, I started fasting. And I decided Sunday night to go ahead and dry fast. And so now do not listen, I know there are many people opposed to dry fasting and there's good reason. I have been fasting and intermittent fasting and detoxing for 15 years now. So do not try this, but I agree you for those biohackers that are out there that want to push it in a 24-hour dry fast. We're going to do what we can do in a 3-day water fast pretty much. And according to even Jason Funk says that, but he is against dry fasting. I've read some of the Russian literature with help in translation. I've read some of the work. There's another practitioner in Australia that's been doing this for quite a while now and very skeptically did it myself. And so just 24-hour, actually I did a 48-hour dry fast. And so broke my fast with herbs and bone broth and broke it that way. And then just doing now just intermittent fasting for 1 meal a day. And then I'll do another 2-day dry fast or water fast. Haven't quite decided on that one yet. But it's fascinating, the energy level, right? And also because of that whole metabolic flexibility is, it takes for me, it's challenging to get into ketosis, even though I've been doing this now for a while, but it is challenging for me to get in ketosis. So when I want to bump myself right back into ketosis, I will extend my fast in order to do so for the most part, and then maintain it and keep checking. And so that's what I've done. But in the mornings, after, now I would normally would do a water or bone broth or keto green shakes throughout the day, just type of those different types of fasting, pseudo fasting, right? To empower detoxification, elimination of toxins, really key to heal the gut, the digestive lining, and to empower my energy, get into that keto green state as quickly as possible for that clarity. So I found through these years of intermittent fasting, if I'm even just doing a 13-hour to 15-hour fast, when I wake up in the morning, and one thing I do, Mindy, in my programs, I recommend is if women have nocturia, if they're getting up 1, 2, 3 times in the middle of the night to use the bathroom, after dinner, nothing more than a hot tea, more than 4 to 8 ounces, right? Because otherwise we're, number one, it dilutes our digestive enzymes, and we need to digest our food with our digestive enzymes. If we're diluting them, we're diluting that process. And then we're not going to get up in the middle of the night to use the bathroom.
Yeah.
So that helps us get a better restorative sleep. So that's the one thing. And then when you wake up, drink that tall glass of alkaline water with lemon juice. And I've used Mighty Maca. And I always get that question from my audience. Well, is Mighty Maca technically breaking your fast? And I'm not sure if it, because I have, I mean, it's hard to test mTOR. Is it or isn't it? But I know this, that I feel more energized throughout the day, and I'm adding these alkalinizers, these detoxifiers into my system to help quickly flush out any toxins that have been, released in this process, right? And for me, that makes a difference. So what are your thoughts on my Holy Week fasting?
Yeah, no, I love all of it. So let me kind of go through each piece of what you said. The first thing I would say is I think for somebody who's new to the ketogenic diet, I think that the very first step is to understand if you do 13 to 15 hours of fasting and you do keep your carbs down, can you get into ketosis? Because if you can you go without food where you're not suffering? If you can, then I think that's like the base we all should launch from. Right. From there, I say you can trick it out in any way you want to. When I heard you talk, I'm like, that you're absolutely right. You are metabolically flexible. So if you do bone broth or you do Mighty Maca, there's a good chance it's going to keep you in autophagy. It's going to keep you in a ketogenic state because your mitochondria are healthy. You've put a lot of work into your health overall in your life. So for someone like you, it may work. For somebody who's really has a tremendous amount of mitochondrial dysfunction and is really struggling to lose weight, sometimes those little pieces like drinking bone broth or doing the Mighty Maca may not be the best scenario to help their mitochondrial repair and get unstuck from that dysfunctional place. That's what I've noticed. Now, here's the way you test. This is the easiest way because you're right. We cannot test autophagy. And somebody's going to come up with a way to test autophagy and they'll make $1 million at it because it would really help us all. And on my YouTube channel, we talk, oh my God, there are so many discussions about when autophagy kicks in. And everybody thinks they understand it, but I'm going to go to the point that we're all unique. So, but here's how you test it. You do test your blood sugar. So like on a reader, see what it's at, drink the drink. So drink Mighty Maca, do the bone broth, and then a half hour later, test your blood sugar again. If your blood sugar stays the same, if it drops, you're going to be fine. I tested Mighty Maca. I was so excited when you sent me all those wonderful treats. Thank you. And, most of my busy days in my clinic, I don't eat until I come home. And so the Mighty Maca was sitting there and I'm like, I looked immediately at the ingredients and I was like, I wonder if this will kick me out. And sure enough, it does not. And it's been a great thing to drink in the afternoon when I know I'm going 24 hours in a fasted state. So for me, and probably for you, it's a really nice thing to reach for when you're trying to extend that fast. Just like bone broth can be that way too.
And you told me about that. So I checked my blood sugar with Mighty Maca and it actually goes down.
Yeah.
It was fascinating because I'll drink it in the morning, I don't call it breaking fast because I like my break fast to be my keto green smoothie. So, but I'm alkalinizing, hydrating, getting Mighty Maca in. And so I don't consider it breaking fast. And to prove like, what is it doing for my body? What's the physiology versus the ideology?
Right.
And that I was watching and my blood sugar dipped a little bit. And I was like, how cool is that? I love that.
Yeah.
And that that's a way that to look at it, to gauge it. And how is it, because everyone's different. How is it responding to you? Because mitochondrial damage is really key. Talk about that, Mindy. Like, how does someone know if they've got mitochondrial damage?
Yeah. What I think is so cool about what we're learning about about being metabolically flexible is that for years we thought that the dysfunction was always in the nucleus. It was always in our genes. And much of medicine still thinks this way. You walk in, you're told you have a diagnosis of cancer. The typical question would be why? And the doctor says it's just in your genetics. Well, epigenetics changed all of that, and wonderful researchers like Thomas Seyfried have us looking at maybe there's another part of the cell that's it has a dysfunctional state to it here that we need to be addressing. Terry Walls is a great example of, I love her story because she really, with her MS, realized it was not a genetic thing, that she could have a lot of control over the mitochondria. So I love how obsessed the nutritional and the functional medicine world is with mitochondria. I think we should be obsessed with it. Now, to answer your question of how do we know if our mitochondria are not working well, I think the easiest way to tell is if you cannot go without food. If you cannot go without food, and I learned this from Dr. Naisha Winters, who you should have on your podcast as well. She is she calls herself a thriver of cancer. So she had cancer years ago, and she's a naturopathic doctor, and discovered that if all she did was repair the mitochondria, that it actually made her cancer go away. And she's in remission now. This is like a decade. She was one of those people that got a short sentence, and now here she is decades later, still alive. And so what she said, and I would agree, is that if you cannot go without food, if you're struggling to go 10 hours without food, there's a good chance you've got a mitochondria that's got a tremendous amount of dysfunction in it.
So good. That is so good. Yeah, that's a great point. And so the first steps to increasing that is that short intermittent fast, right?
That's right.
And do that short intermittent fast and then start with these principles.
Yeah. And to make a point on that I think people need to know is that when you first start to fast and your mitochondria of your cells are not healthy, it's not really comfortable. This is not meant, that transition into the longer fast may be uncomfortable. But guess what? If you just look at everything in life, like if you get to a point in life where things are really tough, what happens out of that is you grow and you become a stronger person. You learn new strategies, right? Well, the body does the same thing. When you force it into adaptation, when you put it to its edge, you may not feel good in that moment, but what it's going to do is it's going to repair. And the more you do that, the easier this gets.
No pain, no gain. Is that what you're saying?
A little bit, but again, I'm going to say take it with love, because you don't have to suffer through the process. But if you hang in there, 13 hours may seem daunting right now, but if you hang in there, I promise you there'll come a time like what happens to most of us, where you go 18, 19 hours, you don't even realize that you haven't eaten.
Right. And again, it's a muscle. Fasting is a muscle that you exercise. And, the first time I did fasting, it was like, oh my God, I was obsessed with food. Right. And to know ghrelin, our hunger hormone, peaks at, 48 hours. Right. So that day 2 is really, really hard. But then you get through that and you're like, okay, I can do this, but it's an exercise. You work up to it because, and if we should go to the uncomfortable. We should push our bodies into the uncomfortable. We are way too comfortable as a society right now too.
Yeah. I mean, think about, we have access to food all day long. So we eat all day long, but that's not how our bodies were designed.
It is not. One of the things I learned when I was in France, part of my world journey, 2006, 2007, we did a home exchange. We stayed in a southern French area near Toulouse. And what I noticed, we went, I've got the kids, we're late doing whatever, getting up, and we go to have breakfast. Well, I'm sorry, it's closed from such and such an hour, right? If you're not there for the, petit déjeuner times, for breakfast times or lunch times, there's no dinner time. It's no food in between. You can't get food. Yes, you can have a drink or something, but you cannot give it. No, we are not cooking for you. You know what you need? And so that's no snacks, right?
Yeah.
Snacks. And then the other thing, and this is something we noticed in Holland and many places in Europe, you don't get water at the table. You don't get free refills. That I just did a blog. I don't know if I've released it yet, but free refills destroy our digestive tract, right?
Interesting. I love that idea. That's so true. And what also happens in Europe, most people have a cup of coffee in the morning. And then they don't eat until later in the day. So I think that's also, and in some sense, they're staying in a fasted state. that long. It's just they're looking, and they have one big meal a day. There's like one meal where they sit down and have it all together.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. In different cultures, different experiences, but
yeah.
that, like, again, the longevity cultures, community,
Yeah.
what we're establishing here. Now,
Yeah.
one thing I wanted to ask you was, this is something that always gets asked. Will fasting destroy your metabolism?
Yes.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah. Okay. I love this question because I get asked it all the time. So I think you have to ask yourself, where does metabolism come? What part of the cell controls metabolism? And we know we're back at the mitochondria. So the first thing I would say is that the ketogenic and fasting lifestyle will repair the mitochondria, like we said. And most of the time, people will find that it actually speeds up their metabolism. So the opposite happens, which again is so counterintuitive to what we've been taught. So the only place I've ever seen it really affect people is with a couple of things. One, if all they do is keto and fasting day after day after day, they don't have the green variety, they're not feasting. The best way I can explain that is it would be like stocking your fireplace with firewood, and you look at all the firewood you have and you're like, this is amazing, I'm just going to burn fires every day. And then one day you look at your firewood selection and you're like, oh, I'm kind of low, I think I'll slow down on how much I burn my fires. The same thing can happen in the human body when we're in deprivation for too long with too much fasting, too much keto, is that it can slow down because it doesn't know more is coming. So that's why you throw a feast day in there every once in a while. And
Exactly.
the way I recommend is that
for me, 5 days, a little too frequently, but okay.
Yeah, right. So, but you could do that once you're metabolically flexible. You can go on vacation and eat whatever you want, and then come back and click into a keto fasting life.
Yeah.
But I think 5 days a week, do keto 5 days a week with intermittent fasting. I think that's great. I think 1 day a week you take and you try to push your fast a little bit longer. You try to experience that. And then I think 1 day a week you feast. And you don't fast, you just enjoy yourself. For me, that's Sunday. We get together as a family, and it's freeing to not think about it on that day.
Yep. And then you've prepared your body. What I found interesting was the science, and this blew my mind too when I looked at it. Fasting won't decrease our metabolism, but caloric restriction will.
Right. Well,
so like that's counterintuitive, right? Yeah. And so that makes it easier to fast for me. Yeah. Knowing this, right? Because so let me explain. So yeah, let's talk about that, because fasting, not eating anything, water fasting, or even, but when we're doing just, low calorie caloric restriction, I'm not exactly sure how many calories there, but when we're caloric restriction, our body's like, okay, I'm going to get used to this, and I am going to slow down my metabolism, just like your wood burning analogy, which I love. And so caloric restriction for the long run, that's why the yo-yo dieting. That's why the years and decades of yo-yo dieting that we've experienced. So fasting over low calorie restriction, which brings into, the longevity diet, Walter Longo's, that's a caloric restriction diet.
Yeah.
So the fasting movement. So is that like that's one thing I haven't dug into, I'm interested in, but I want your opinion, because that seems like that's a caloric restriction. Will that destroy our metabolism?
Yeah. So, I'll talk about fast mimicking in a moment. Let me talk about the caloric restriction really briefly. It changes your set point. And I think Dr. Fung was really the one that brought that to our attention, that when you lower calories and you hop on the treadmill and you increase your output, what happens is you start to change your set point. So now when you go off of that calorie restricted diet, or you're not on the treadmill for hours a day, then your body has this new set point. That's not fasting in the ketogenic diet. We're not calorie restricting. We're just changing your eating window. So when you eat. And this is where your keto greens is awesome, because eat a lot of greens, eat a lot of vegetables, eat. So, but then when you fast, you fast. So it's just a change of how we're approaching this weight loss problem that so many people have. Okay, having said that, fast mimicking. So I love fast mimicking. It is also a study that his studies proved it secretes stem cells. Really impressive research. He showed that with calorie restriction, with protein restriction. Those were his two main variables that he could actually see pancreatic cells regrow it when you did it 5 days in a row, and he did it once a month, 5 days in a row for 3 months. He saw these cells regrow in type 1 and type 2 diabetics.
Wow.
Type 1, let's just go
right,
to that.
Right, because they've been written off, right?
They've been totally written off, like, oh, your lifestyle doesn't make a difference. But what he showed is that you could actually regrow these damaged cells. So now, having said that, fast mimicking is calorie restriction. So I do not recommend you do it all the time, nor does his research. His research showed you do 5 days of fast mimicking in a row once a month.
Wow. Okay, good.
I love that.
So that's flexibility again, right?
Yeah. So you tap in, like we're going to do this with the next fast for the resetters. I'm giving people 2 different options. They can do 5 days of fast mimicking, or they can do 3 days of water fasting, because both of those have proven to secrete stem cells. So we're going to like focus in on stem cells. And that's where, well, gosh, if I have a choice between eating some greens and some veggies for 5 days or eating nothing for 3 days, I'll take the greens and veggies for 5 days. I don't know about you.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
So you should try it. And you should try, he has a Prolon, which is his pre-made food. Have you tried that at all?
No, not at all. I haven't yet.
You should try it. We tried it.
I'll have to get him on my podcast too. And I'll try it and then get him on my podcast and see. What's interesting though, because fasting increases our secretion of stem cells. And in that state, right, like insulin sensitivity, improving that is how only in the state where stem cell therapy works better, right?
Yep. Oh, absolutely.
So in the fasting state. So in those instances, that's really a critical component too. So yeah, it's fascinating what's coming up in the research now. And then also, again, it is reinforcing traditional wisdom.
Yeah.
Traditional societies, the Orthodox religions, like Greek Orthodox religion, fast, like I think it's a total of over 250, over 200 days a year, like from extended fast to, different types of fasting. And that's key. Muslims in Ramadan, they're fasting daily. So there's a reason. And this time of year, which is typically coming out of winter when food is scarce anyway. Right. And so until the harvest comes in. So it's like there's some traditional wisdom to that. And then when we're exposed to 24-hour, drive-throughs, it's really hard to, resist sometimes. And so recognizing we have to honor our body's design, the intelligent design of our body, and give it the time and space to restore itself, right?
Yeah. And I think if there's anything I love about the craze that everybody has about fasting right now, is that I feel, and I don't know if you see this in your community, I feel like we're moving from a time where we used to give so much wisdom to the pill or to the surgery or to the doctor. Like there was so much like, that's going to be the cure. And I'm not saying that doesn't have a place in time, but what I see is that with things like the keto life and fasting is we start to realize just how smart our bodies are, and that we have this internal wisdom that nobody ever taught us how to tap into. And sometimes that chronic brain fog you have, that chronic fatigue, that weight gain, it's not going to come in anything more simple than just fast. Just start fasting and rely and see what your body can do to heal itself. It's like the ultimate doctor within.
Exactly. And so I would just encourage all listeners to take back your power over your body, right?
Yes, exactly.
Your body, honor its design. Mindy, it is always a pleasure speaking with you. I want to thank you so much for being with us today. And for our listeners, drmindypelz.com, drmindypelz.com, and her Resetters group on Facebook. So search Resetter on Facebook and join her community. And she's a wealth of information as well. She has a podcast and she's just tied into the best and the brightest. And as you can tell from our conversation, we just love each other.
We do. And hey, I got to tell you, I've been working on my oxytocin, And it's awesome. It's of all of the hormones to work on, it sure is the most fun.
Exactly, right? It
Yeah.
is. It is.
Yeah.
Right in line. So for our listeners, I want to, Mindy, just to give us one pearl. If there's one thing that you think, everyone listening should do, is able to do on a daily, on a regular basis, what's that one pearl, the next right step for our listeners that you'd like to give?
I think you should look at creating what I call a fasting lifestyle. I did a video on the 7 different fasts that I recommend. It's on YouTube, but I think just like what you eat matters. I think the timing of when you eat and your fasting window matters as well. So if you're just learning this for the first time, don't get overwhelmed and just dive in. There's no wrong way. I always say there's no such thing as a failed fast. You just jump in and you start working the principles, and you will be blown away at what your body can do.
Absolutely. Well, I want to thank you, Dr. Mindy Pelz, for joining us today, and encourage everyone listening to join her Resetters Tribe in her community and check out her website. And if you are in Silicon Valley, but she sees patients from all around the world, and that is about empowering your body using, tapping into what really works to help improve mitochondrial health. That is our energy. That is our cellular powerhouse. And when it comes to disease, that's often where it's beginning. Yep. So I encourage you to get with her and her team of amazing people. And I want to thank you guys for listening today. Please share this episode. Let your friends know about it. And I am always so grateful for your reviews and your feedback and your questions. So thank you for leaving us a review. I read every single one of them and so appreciate it. It makes a difference in bringing us out into the world and bringing this information into the lives of those you love and creating healthy community all around. So thank you all for joining us today. Thank you, Dr. Mindy.
Thank you. This was awesome. And thank you for the good work you're doing. I mean, I think one of the things we geek out on each other with is just, there's so much great information people need to know about. So you're doing amazing work out there. You're everywhere, by the way. I see you everywhere I turn. So you're doing such a good job.
Thank you. And thank you again.